Hey, seventh graders. It's Monday, May 11th. This week we are going to be starting uh, a new chapter on Tuesday, but today and tomorrow we need to finish up our chapter on World War II. So, tomorrow's Zoom class, could you have your narration done for World War II? A lot of us have already gotten in, that's great. Um, but I'd also like to hear any stories that you might have from your family's history with World War II. Anybody have anybody that fought in it? Grandparents, great grandparents, and if there's any World War II stories, I'd love to hear where your family ancestors fought in World War II, and maybe any associated memories of living during that time would be great. Um, so today we wanted to talk about the Pacific. Last uh, YouTube video we talked about the campaign in Europe, going from North Africa into Italy, then into Normandy and France, and then across into Germany. And now we wanted to talk about the other part of the war, which was fought against Japan. And this section of the war sometimes is called island hopping. It was the idea of we're not going to invade, obviously, from California or even from Pearl Harbor and Hawaii. We got to slowly bounce our way from island to island, capturing those islands, then using those as jumping off points for the next invasion. And so you can see the map here has sort of our general flow of soldiers, troops, planes, and boats that came into the Pacific and sort of kind of coming up from underneath Japan and then attacking them from below. And one of the last islands right before Japan is an island called Iwo Jima. And this iconic statue is based on a picture that was taken on Iwo Jima where the Marines planted a flag on the top of the island. And that picture became sort of a rallying cry for the Pacific War, the soldiers who bravely fought, taking um, island by island against the Japanese. And these kind of battles were very difficult. It involved a lot of hand-to-hand combat, a lot of gruesome warfare, and took a lot of courage and bravery to stare the enemies face to face and battle them in trenches, but a lot of times in caves. There was a lot of cave warfare in this one, and it led to a high casualty rate. A lot of soldiers died in the Pacific, and half of the men who planted this flag ended up dying just a few days later, actually. So um, it was a tough war, and it led to a really tough decision, uh, which was the dropping of a nuclear bomb on China or on Japan. And on the left-hand side of that picture, you'll see the men and women who were part of the Manhattan Project, mostly men there, and uh, they were in charge of weaponizing nuclear energy and figuring out a way to get um, uh, nuclear destruction into a bomb before the Germans. We had gotten evidence from Albert Einstein that the Germans were working on this, and so the president commissioned the Manhattan Project to make sure that the United States got there first. And we did, and we had the nuclear bomb. We tested it in New Mexico. Then we warned Japan that we were, if they didn't surrender, that they would be facing utter destruction, complete, quick, utter destruction, is what the letter said to Japan. Japan uh, didn't surrender, and so we dropped two bombs, one on Hiroshima and one on Nagasaki, and the result was um, a lot of death and a lot of instantaneous death and a lot of civilian casualties. We did drop um, we dropped pamphlets via the sky saying, "You need to get out of here. We're about to bomb the city." Um, but a lot of those pamphlets were confiscated, and um, the Japanese didn't allow for people to leave the city, and so it resulted in a lot of civilian casualties. Somewhat, some estimate maybe upwards of maybe 400,000 or so. Um, but it was the deadliest war in human history. So we've got the German side of the fighting, which was tough. We didn't use the atomic bomb. We used firebombing in Germany and a lot of civilian casualties there. We used the atomic bomb in Japan, and um, all of those things led this to be the deadliest war in human history. And you see both things in the war. You see evil. You see um, people like the Nazis and their ideology and all of that. We also see some bravery, right? We saw that picture of the planting the flag in Iwo Jima. We see lots of courage, and then when we think about the Holocaust, even we think about not only the evilness of it, but also the resiliency of humans in the face of that kind of evil. And so we see the good and the bad emerging in World War II. And for a lot of people, it was a wake-up call for just how evil humans could be. And it reminded me of this quote by Shakespeare in Hamlet: "What a piece of work is man." Getting to the idea that humans we're a mystery, we're a paradox, and the Bible does a really good job of explaining why we're that paradox, why we're so complicated. We have that sin nature that's deep inside of us. We also know that we were created to be rulers of the world, and we were supposed to be um, very high and noble. And so this paradox of what we should have been versus what we really are um, is a tragedy. And we see that in World War II, and we see that in lots of different ways here. And so it becomes a really rich place to go to sort of figure out what is human nature, what are we like. We've got both the Nazis and we've got the courage and the bravery of people who fight against the Nazis. We've got the Holocaust and we've got the Holocaust survivors. It's both, and it's complicated. And so maybe on the Zoom class tomorrow, we'll talk about the end of World War II. We'll talk about the Holocaust, and I'd like to hear some of your family's World War II stories. All right, have a great Monday.